Thank you very much to the conference organizers for this opportunity. As indicated, I'll be presenting on behalf of Susan Brown, Mihaela Leuven, and Luciana Frizera, describing LEAF, the linked editing academic framework. In particular, I'll focus on how LEAF and its suite of tools provide the sophisticated and editorial support that researchers need, whether they be novice or sophisticated, or experienced, to create annotations that connect cultural heritage materials in meaningful ways. I'll give a brief overview of the LEAF platform and toolset, offer an example of how materials are edited, published, and presented in LEAF, and finally gesture at how the bridge between LEAF and its sister project LINKS, which Susan will discuss tomorrow at more length, enhances the annotation ecosystem by creating iterative editorial workflows. LEAF is a virtual research environment incorporating tools that are designed to lower the bar for entry for more scholars and students to engage in sophisticated cultural heritage research without necessarily having to learn how to code, pay for expensive proprietary software, or expect a high degree of technical infrastructural support from their home institutions. LEAF was developed by the Canadian Writing Research Collaboratory, or QWERC, in partnership with Bucknell University and Newcastle University, and is a strong move forward from the original QWERC platform. LEAF's tools focus on particular tasks and connect across phases of production. Transcribing, making documents machine readable, standards-based encoding and annotating, entity authority reconciliation, and data publication and sharing. There are currently 3 installations of LEAF in Canada, at Bucknell in the US, which is the one you're looking at the moment, and at Newcastle in the UK. We know that every researcher does not necessarily want or need an end-to-end production environment. For many, there is only one task or step along the pipeline that they need help with. We have developed the LEAF tools in modular fashion and make them available as standalone tools through LEAF Commons. And with a GitHub account, you can work, collaborate, and maintain your own repositories. LEAF Writer, the centerpiece of LEAF Commons and LEAF VRE, in my opinion, is a web-based TEI RDF editor. There's also a file format transformation tool called the LEAF Turning Engine, or LEAF-T, and an interactive reading environment that leverages encoded text for analysis called the Dynamic Table of Contexts. I'll be touching on all of these in the next few slides. As my case study, I will use the Heresies project at Bucknell, which aims to produce a digital edition and linked resource for the Heresies Journal, a formative second-wave feminist art criticism publication produced from 1977 to 1993. Proper production of this edition is challenging because it was designed to present equitably textual and imagistic works in a sometimes hypermedial layout. It's important as a digital humanities project because the Heresies Journal offers astounding contributions from some of the 20th century's most influential scholar creators and informs in new ways our understanding of the development of feminist thought. But these works have not been easily accessible and never before brought together into a single space. So we are endeavoring to make all 27 issues machine-readable, semantically encoded, publishing high-resolution images of the issue's pages, and simultaneously creating connections between the people who wrote for Heresies and the people they wrote about. Through LEAF, we are doing this work in widely used standards like TEI, RDF, and IIIF. What you see is a satirical essay by Joanna Russ from issue 4 on women's traditional arts, the politics of aesthetics. The essay is a good example of why this work is interesting because it is replete with references to many female writers and their works. This view is the encoded text in LEAF Writer, which we transcribed in Transcribus, transformed into TEI, created as a repository item in LEAF, and encoded in LEAF Writer, where we've tagged name entities. And you could see the blue tags on the screen are named people, and they're also named works like Frankenstein, The Tale of Genji, and others. And we've reconciled these entities with identifiers on VIAF and Wikidata, which you can see on the left panel here. The resulting RDF is stored in the document's TEI header. We captured both explicit and implicit references to the artists and their works. Being able to encode and annotate in a single user-friendly interface has been significant for the team, not all of whom are versed in pointy bracket TEI, to analyze and annotate these texts. To simplify the transcribus to TEI workflow, we developed a little tool called the Leaf Turning Engine, which automates simple transformation scenarios through Leaf without the users having to manually write or run XSLTs. We currently support import of transcribus form files and export from TEI to XML or HTML files, and soon we'll support Markdown export as well to create basic static web pages. This exemplifies the Leaf approach, helping to smooth the parts of the editorial workflow that often require additional coding knowledge or technical support. Here you can see a simple web page output of the essay. The Leaf to TEI HTML, or sorry, Leaf TEI HTML output held onto the named entity links to the authority URIs, and you can't really see them, but all of these named people are linked to their URIs. Susan will tell you more about that tomorrow, and what can that afford. The Dynamic Table of Contexts, or DTOC, is a newly integrated tool originally developed by a group of researchers in Canada, including Susan, Stefan Sinclair, Stan Rucker, and many others, and is also available via the Voyant tool suite. It is different from other Voyant tools, however, in the way it builds upon encoded texts rather than tokenized ones, and the tags that we use to uncover semantic meaning in our texts are revealed in two ways. First, you can leverage the tagged elements, which you can see here, and specified attribute-driven instances of elements via the tag panel. And second, you can create an index that points to themes and concepts in more nuanced, implicit ways. There's also a searchable keyword panel in the center that further reveals where these terms appear across the text. It is an e-reader in one sense that offers an interactive reading environment drawing upon one or multiple documents. So for instance, this particular DTOC draws upon only the Rust piece, but I could create and publish an edition that pulls together all of the essays and articles within an entire Heresies issue to create a single readable document. Readers can also curate a DTOC, drawing in different ways upon the encoding that has been undertaken. DTOC is produced from a simple JSON file that calls the TEI, but does not touch the underlying document. So I can continue to make adjustments and refine my encoding in LeafWriter, and then update the particular DTOC edition without having to create or distinguish different versions of the TEI document. And I'm going to, nope, I'm not. I was going to try and do a simple demo, but I'm not going to do that. As I mentioned in the beginning, LEAF is also part of the linked infrastructure for networked cultural scholarship, or LINKS project. The bridge that is being built between LEAF and LINKS extends the editorial production pipeline to offer new forms of sharing and publication. Web annotations in LEAF can be pushed regularly at the data holder's discretion to LINKS as linked open data, and in return, publication of LEAF-generated data in LINKS tools drives traffic back to LEAF and enriches those projects in LEAF, which fulfills the hopes of many humanists with aspirations of making their research findable and shareable in larger audiences. Another LEAF LINKS bridge tool is on the horizon is NERV, or the Named Entity Relationship Vetting Environment, which performs NER on a text, suggesting URIs for entities, and so speeding up the process of reconciling entities to authorities. NERV will be available as a standalone tool in LEAF Commons, and will also be integrated into LeafWriter later this year. I'm only including this slide as a signpost for Susan's presentation tomorrow. One of the benefits of producing static web pages of LeafWriter text objects is that they can then be further explored by users with tools like the LINKS Content Explorer. In closing, I'd like to thank all of the many people and funding agencies that have made this LEAF project possible. It is exciting to work on a project, the goal of which has always been to encourage scholars and students to participate more effectively using standards and best practices to produce and publish digitally informed research, and so bring more voices into this research sphere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, questions, Melvin?
I don't see any mics, so I'll speak up. I don't know a lot about TI, but one thing I know is that it is important that there is some form of longevity, right? So that documents can be read in the future.
Yes.
But my question is about the annotations that you add through named entity recognition, which impose some sort of structure on documents that is quite dependent on what the algorithms can do right now, but it's also often quite subjective. So doesn't that, isn't that in opposition to what TEI tries to do? So when do you decide what you add serves what you want to do with TEI, and what are annotations that are more ambiguous and other ways to capture that ambiguity within the markup?
So is the question about the decisions you make editorially that generate the entities?
Yeah, if you take the entities as an example, but what do you add and what is it that you don't add? So the editorial decision making, yeah.
So many answers to this question. I would say that one way, and one way we've done it in projects like this and others, is that you hold on to states of the TEI file so that you can, you have kind of a stable structural component, and then if you make decisions about particular ways in which you want to encode, then you can create different branches, as it were. So there may be a form of the text that you pursue for entity capture, and then there might be one that you use for extraction of different kinds of data. It's not, I don't feel as someone who does TEI that you can ever completely capture everything in a document without making editorial decisions that are going to affect the structure, because that's how you work with any text, right? Anything that's an annotation is going to shape the way the document is maintained. But I think maybe that's a way to think about it. Is that kind of, maybe? Okay.
I see the editorial decision making as people have done historically.
Yeah.
As editors. But by depending on an algorithm, you bring in all kinds of biases that are often not very transparent. And how do you document that? Because that's not part of, you can say, okay, this is a version that has used an identity recognition algorithm X. And then in 2 years down the road, I see these branches of versions. And then in AI, we have model cards and data sheets to talk about this sort of transparency and explainability. But you probably need something like that as well with TEI now if you start using it.
If you encode properly, all your decisions should be transparent at the document level, so you should be able to see them in the file. And I think with the RDF we're working on, it actually is written into the header, so you should be able to see who's encoding. And I think Susan wants to answer the question.
There's a human vetting stage, so it's not like it's just sucking in the algorithm matching and vetting, sort of human oversight. Although, it is built to build in human vetting, but you're absolutely right that we need to be tracking the software that's being used as well, because that does have an influence on what candidates are being suggested and so on. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was thinking about the text itself.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Thank you. Seems amazing. I have a question on the type of entities that you can annotate, and how would you, if it's possible, how would you do overlapping annotation? Because we had a project with Itati where we were trying to do that, and the point is that at a certain point you want to annotate a piece of text and say something about it, and someone else wants to say something else about it. And how do you resolve the problem? Not an ontological level, but more on a practical, like what selector do you use to select the text for doing that? Or from a computational perspective, how do you implement that?
So from within, so if you're using LeafWriter, for example, you're in some senses bound by what you are able to do with the standard of TEI, right? In some cases, you can use overlapping or nesting your entities, but I think that one of the things we've been experimenting with the work that I've been doing is actually how you gather multiple voices looking for different ways into a text, right? So it's not like a Google situation where lots of people can engage at the same time. It actually requires one person to be able to go through and do their own work, and then another person can go through and do their own. But I would say that depending on, I mean, I think it's a two-pronged question, right? One is that what will the code afford in terms of the kinds of annotations that can be done? And the other is, how do you want people to engage? Do you want to invite everyone in, or do you want to identify particular people who will have the kinds of permissions to do that kind of work? And then there's the question of transparency and identification of who's doing that work as well. So I'm not sure which exactly you're thinking about, or both, or all.
I was thinking about, well, first of all, what the software afford in terms of annotation, if it has to afford overlapping one, and therefore what things we can actually annotate. That would be just
So the type of entities are basically people, places, organizations, titles, citations, scholarly notes, things. Someday my dream is to include events, but that's a long time away. What is an event anyway? And in that sense, some of those can be nested. So you can capture, a person's name within a title, for example, or things like that. But again, as long as the code is valid, then LeafWriter will allow you to do that kind of entity capture. And Susan would like to say something.
RDF can overlap.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the RDF, and one of the reasons. Sorry, it's one of the reasons that we moved to link data to supplement the TEI, because you have the overlapping problem with TEI. So the RDF can totally overlap and just point to the span that you need to point to.
But you can also choose not to do it.
Yes.
Can I just follow up? So, sorry. That's great, and you can do that in RDF. So it was not clear to me. You are bringing back the modification to the TI file, or are you leaving them the annotation on an RDF level?
They're integrated so that the TEI and the RDF are wed together in the document. So, right? No.
Because then they go to the.
Huh? Oh, right, I'm sorry, okay. So you can choose to just do TEI only. You can eventually choose to do RDF only. You can do overlapping TEI and RDF. You can also choose to do not overlapping TEI and RDF. So you make that decision as you start your editing session. But once you've started, I don't think you can stop. You can't choose to go back to TEI only if you've been encoding in RDI overlap.
All right. I think
Thank
it's time to have a coffee break. So let's thank our speaker once again.